Hello, and welcome to this workshop on sleep and shift work. My goal for today is to share some information with you about the importance of sleep and how it affects your health and your day-to-day life. As part of this, I'm going to run through a little bit of science. Then we're going to do an exercise which will help you assess your current sleep health. We'll also talk a little bit about common misconceptions around sleep, and I'm going to provide you with some tools to improve your sleep and some strategies to put these in place when you're working shift work. And then finally, I'm going to share a little bit more about what I do and how I might be able to help you moving forward. But before we kick off, a little bit about me. So hi, I am Carla. I am the founder, owner, and sleep coach at Aura Sleep Coaching. I left my corporate job in mid-2019 because I wanted to do something more meaningful. I felt for years that I wanted to work in health and fitness, but I really wasn't sure where to start or exactly what to do. It was a passion, I just didn't know how to make it into a career. But an opportunity to open a wellness business came up, so I grabbed it with both hands. And I actually started studying sleep soon after that. Fast forward past the struggles of operating a face-to-face business during lockdowns here in Melbourne. And when we finally came out the other side, I actually decided to close that face-to-face business because I was loving the sleep coaching so much. I really wanted to focus on it. I felt like it was the sleep coaching where I could make the most difference. And I am a little bit of a sleep nerd. Even before I started studying, I was already obsessed with sleep. I love freedom and adventure. I'm pretty active, love being outdoors, whether that be barefoot in a park, hiking, or swimming in the ocean. And this love of freedom is also part of the reason I left the corporate world. And finally, I'm a fur parent to a 3-year-old Groodle called Obi, and that's him in the picture there. So I know that you're all here because you know sleep is important, but let's quickly look at how integral it really is. So sleep is essential for health. And when you think about it, life is really split into two distinct parts. One is when we're awake, when there's action, there's energy, there's output, there's expenditure. And the other half is when we repair, we regenerate, and we restore. And of course, that is when we sleep. All sorts of wonderful things happen when we sleep. Immunity is boosted, learning and memories are cemented, motivation and concentration are improved. It even helps with weight management and fat loss, and there's just so much more. When sleep is disrupted, we actually see an increase in chronic disease. We see an increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes. And this is mainly due to the body not being able to effectively process sugar in the blood. Another process which occurs while we sleep is the regulation of blood pressure. When we sleep, the heart rate slows, the blood pressure drops, which allows the heart to recover from the strain incurred during the day. But poor sleep means that the heart doesn't get the rest and recovery it needs overnight. And unfortunately, this increases the risk of high blood pressure, high cholesterol, heart attack, and stroke. And then with mental health, we actually see a bi-directional relationship with sleep. For a long time, it was actually thought that sleep problems were a symptom of mental health. But we now know that sleep issues can actually be a cause as well as a result of mental health issues. With poor sleep, we see an increased risk of depression, suicidal thoughts, attempts, Alzheimer's, and of stress and anxiety. And without sleep, we die. So this comes about in two ways. There is a rare genetic disorder which exists, which causes the sufferer to stop sleeping, and they actually pass away after 12 to 18 months of no sleep. And the second is drowsy driving. It's estimated that 1 Australian dies every day after falling asleep at the wheel. Okay, let's move into the science, and I will try to keep this brief. To get great sleep, we need to have 3 things aligned. We need to have our sleep pressure high. So this refers to a chemical called adenosine, which builds during our waking hours. We need to have our stress system balanced. So I'm talking about our autonomic nervous system, the rest and digest versus fight or flight. And we need our circadian timing in low wakefulness. These three mechanisms all need to align to get great sleep, but they are independent and they don't actually talk to each other. Let's dive into these a little bit more. The stress system. Now, alertness needs to be dialed right down. Even slight stimulation can affect sleep, and this can be caused by something as simple as watching a dramatic movie, or having a fight before bed, even scrolling social media or reading a work email that starts stressing you out. And in my experience, this is where many people are actually out of balance. And this is why stress reduction tools, or even just having a really simple stress management strategy or a stress management tool that you use each night, can have a huge impact on sleep. If anyone here is familiar with that feeling of being dead tired but wide awake when you just cannot seem to turn your brain off, so this can often mean that your circadian rhythm and sleep drive might be in alignment, but due to stress or mental alertness, you can have difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, or getting good quality sleep. Sleep pressure can also be called sleep hunger, and it's caused by this buildup of a chemical called adenosine during your waking hours. And it is a little bit like hunger. The longer you go without food, the hungrier you get. And then once you eat, you're no longer hungry, right? Sleep pressure works in the same way. So it increases continuously while you're awake. Then when you sleep, whether that's a nap or an overnight sleep, the pressure dissipates or subsides. And you can sort of see that reflected here on this graph. And there are actually some external factors which affect adenosine or your sleep pressure or sleep hunger. So let's have a look at what they are. One has a positive effect, and that is actually exercise or movement. So exercising actually increases adenosine, which is what we want if we're having trouble sleeping. We want to have a higher sleep pressure, so we're more likely to fall asleep. And the other external factor is caffeine. Now, caffeine negatively affects adenosine. It basically blocks that adenosine. So when you hear that you shouldn't drink caffeine or consume caffeine too close to bed, this is why. And then circadian rhythm. So the circadian rhythm refers to our 24-hour internal clock. And every single process in the body aligns to this clock. All of those processes also have preferred times to operate in alignment with that clock. And here I'm talking about things like digestion, boosting immunity, hormone release, peak alertness, peak strength, peak coordination. But of course, also when you want to be asleep and awake. And in terms of circadian rhythm, light is the most impactful external factor. Morning light sets our circadian clock each day. This is also affected by genetics. So exactly where each person sits on this 24-hour clock, because we all sit a little bit differently, is actually due to genetics. And I'm sure you've all heard of morning versus evening types, or maybe morning larks and night owls. Now, these are actually preferences of when someone is predisposed to rise or sleep. And these are referred to as chronotypes and can be broken down further into 4 or 5 different types. But before you start blaming your parents for your crappy sleep, genetics only plays a small part. It's around 30%. So despite a genetic preference to a particular chronotype, it is actually the behaviors, the habits, and the lifestyle which will ultimately determine whether someone sleeps well or not. And a quote which I love, which I feel explains this really well, is Genetics loads the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. And this actually refers to many different processes in our body, right? It's really saying that despite being given certain genes, whether or not those genes are turned on or not is actually affected by your lifestyle. And this is just a simple graph showing the circadian rhythm as it specifically relates to sleep. And the timings, of course, vary from person to person. And what we've also got here is the sleep pressure overlaid. So you can see how these actually run together. So in summary, to have great sleep, we want to see a high sleep pressure or high sleep hunger. We want our arousal system to be dialed down. We need that rest and digest, that fight or flight system to be balanced. And we want our circadian timing in a low wakefulness state. Okay, let's talk a little bit about common misconceptions. So something I hear a lot is 8 hours is key. Now, most adults generally need to sleep 7 to 9 hours, but it is really individual and it depends on the person. Some people need 10, 11, or even 12 hours. For someone who's really active, they may need more than average. LeBron James, for example, he actually gets about 12 hours of sleep through a long nightly sleep combined with naps. And Usain Bolt actually naps before he competes. But it's not just quantity that we want to focus on. We also need to make sure that it's quality sleep. And when I'm talking about quality, I'm talking about REM sleep. So REM sleep is your rapid eye movement sleep. It's mainly when you dream. And deep sleep. So deep sleep is largely where the physical restoration occurs. Okay, falling asleep instantly or anywhere means you're a good sleeper. It is commonly believed that falling asleep should just happen immediately, like flicking off a switch. And this just isn't true. If you are someone who tends to fall asleep anywhere or fall asleep as soon as your head hits the pillow, you might actually be cutting yourself short for sleep. You probably need to get some more sleep. So if you're falling asleep on the couch watching TV, for example, that's a sign that you need to be getting more sleep. It's okay, I'll catch up on the weekend. So absolutely, you can sleep longer on the weekends because you've got more time, right? But unfortunately, the damage of actually losing that sleep has already occurred. So to have the best health possible, we should be getting a decent amount of quality sleep consistently each night. Alcohol helps sleep, or it helps to de-stress. Many do feel like it de-stresses them and it helps sleep. Unfortunately, alcohol actually disrupts sleep. It causes increased temperature, it causes dehydration, both of which cause wakefulness and don't allow deep quality sleep. And snoring is normal or harmless or even a little bit cute. So snoring can actually be an indicator for a serious condition called sleep apnea. Now, this is where someone actually stops breathing multiple times per night. Snoring also often occurs via the mouth, which means breathing is happening via the mouth instead of the nose, which again affects sleep quality and overall health. So let's talk a little bit about sleep on shift work. Why is it a problem? Well, if you cast your mind back to the section on circadian rhythm, it's because you have this internal clock, which essentially keeps time for you. So when you're working shifts, that can mess with that internal clock and in turn can cause your sleep-wake cycle to become disrupted, making it really difficult to fall asleep, stay asleep, or get good quality sleep. Let's have a little look at your sleep health. I've got some questions on the page. What you're going to do is actually score yourself according to your answer. So if you say really never, it's a 0. If you say sometimes, it's a 1. And if you say most of the time, or always it's a 2. Just hit pause and go through those questions now. And then what you've got is a score out of 10. So that gives you a little bit of an indication of what your sleep health is currently like. And it could be really interesting for you to actually go back and redo this short questionnaire in a month's time if you make some of the changes I recommend. Sleep hygiene. When I first heard this term years ago, I thought sleep hygiene referred to how often you wash your sheets and pillowcase. Now, that is not what it is. Sleep hygiene actually refers to the behaviours, the habits, the lifestyle, and environmental factors which affect our sleep. And so why is it important? Well, poor sleep hygiene often results in substandard sleep. And improving sleep hygiene has a huge impact on sleep. And I should mention that these sleep hygiene aspects that I'm going to run through now are important all of the time, not just when you're working shifts. The key difference when you're working shifts is when you need to apply them. Let's dive in. Starting with light. So the most impactful thing on your circadian rhythm is light and, of course, dark. So ideally what we want to do is view morning light to reset that circadian clock each day. It actually tells our body what time it is and what it needs to do. So you'll get a cortisol boost, which helps to wake you up, give focus and concentration. It'll also help to get rid of any remaining sleep pressure that's still in the system. Then in the evening, if you can imagine that morning light is providing focus and concentration and telling our brain it's daytime, what do you think bright artificial lights at night might be telling our brains? It's essentially telling our brain that it's daytime, it's time to be alert, it's time to concentrate. So what you want to do is really think about what your evening environment is telling your brain. Is your environment telling it it's nighttime, or is it telling it it's daytime? So when we see light at the wrong time, it can increase cortisol, so that's your wake-up hormone, and it can delay melatonin, which is our sleep hormone. And then temperature. So our temperature actually follows our circadian rhythm, which means it changes throughout our 24-hour cycle. It starts low at its lowest a few hours before waking up, then continues to rise during the day before dropping off in the evening again for sleep. And again, you can see that reflected here on this little graph. So our sleeping environment actually needs to be cool to get great quality sleep. Drinking alcohol or eating will increase our temperature and reduce sleep quality. Hormonal changes during the female monthly cycle. Nutrition, again, as I just mentioned, avoiding eating within 2 to 4 hours of bed, because this will not only increase your temperature, but when you eat late, your body is always going to prioritize digestion over sleep. Alcohol, we've also touched on briefly. So it is a sedative. It causes dehydration and temperature increase. And one drink actually lowers sleep quality by 39%. And caffeine, touched on this very briefly also. You want to think about the timing. It affects sleep quality as well as the ability to fall asleep. So the thing that I like people who drink evening caffeine to think about is it's not just about how you fall asleep after that late caffeine. It's actually how you wake up, because you may fall asleep fine after that evening coffee, but what you may not realize is that it's actually causing disrupted sleep overnight. So what I like people to do is actually think about how they wake up. If they wake up and the first thing they do is reach for another cup of coffee in the morning, that's probably an indication that that evening caffeine might be affecting you more than you realize. I also recommend setting up a simple evening routine. We'll talk about the details of this in a sec. And consistency. So keeping wake and sleep times as similar as possible, even on the weekends and between shifts. So putting it into practice, viewing light soon after waking. Here we're thinking about your morning. So if you're working shift, your morning might actually be in the evening, right? We're thinking about your morning. So you're viewing light soon after waking. Ideally, it would be sunlight, but if you're working shifts, you might need to use something like a light box or a halo light. Ideally, you would be delaying caffeine for at least 90 minutes. Now, this has to do with sleep pressure that we spoke about. You want to exercise or move, and that just helps increase that temperature in the morning. And if you really want to go far with this, you want to have a cool shower. Then your evening, again, thinking about your evening. What is your evening environment telling your brain? So if you are under bright light, if you're on night shift and you've walked outside and the sun is up, that is telling your brain that it is time to wake up, it's time to focus, it's time to concentrate. So what you want to do is make your evening feel like nighttime. Dim lights, low lamps, red light lamps. A good rule of thumb is actually to use as little light as you need to do what you need to do safely. You want to think about nighttime filters on phones or laptops if you need to use them in your evening. As I mentioned already, avoiding eating or drinking alcohol in that 2 to 4 hours before bed. Something relaxing is really helpful to bring that mental alertness down. So that could be reading, meditating, breath work. Yoga Nidra is great. And I've got some clients who even like to play music or draw, whatever resonates with you and helps you calm down. Ending your night on a warm shower or bath. Again, sounds counterintuitive, but a warm shower or bath will actually help cool you down for sleep. Thinking about your sleeping environment, it should be comfortable. It needs to be dark, so consider blockout blinds or an eye mask. It also needs to be quiet, so if you live with other people, it could be a good idea to try earplugs. It needs to be cool. Your sleeping environment needs to be cooler than you probably expect, so ideally between 15 and 19 degrees. And I always recommend having a simple evening routine, which you can do most nights. It doesn't have to be complex because the best routine is actually something that you can do consistently. And this helps with signaling to your brain that it is time to start winding down for sleep. Because remember, going to sleep is not like flipping an off switch. It takes time to wind down for sleep. So a super simple routine would be simply to have a warm shower and then maybe read for 10 minutes. That's it. It can be that simple. When you're working shifts, I really recommend that you plan ahead with this. So before you leave for work, make sure that the curtains are already drawn, just leave a dim lamp on so you're all set for your evening and your environment looks and feels like it's actually nighttime. Take your sunnies to work with you and pop them on either as soon as it starts getting light or as soon as you finish your shift in the morning, so you're not exposed to that sunlight, which is going to confuse your brain and try to tell you that it's time to wake up. Now, when you move between different shifts, if you can, if this is available to you in your rostering, try to adjust gradually. If you live with other people, you probably need to educate those people about the importance of them helping you to maintain a great sleeping environment when you're trying to sleep while they're awake. Okay, so takeaways. Sleep is super important. And if you want to be healthy, happy, and reduce the risk of chronic disease, you really need to focus on getting your sleep right. So you looked at your sleep health. Do you have some work to do? What have you learned from the sleep hygiene tips that I've provided that you could start to implement? Because sleep hygiene will dramatically impact your sleep. Light is the most important, but you can also play with temperature, nutrition, consistency, and timing. Make one change at a time. I've given you a lot of pointers here, but really to set yourself up for success, choose one item that you want to change, do that for a week or two, and then move on. And speaking of making changes, this might be feeling like a lot of information. So if you are feeling a little bit overwhelmed and not sure where to start, that is totally okay, because I am here to help. Now, aside from running seminars and workshops like this, I actually do one-on-one coaching. So if you go away and you struggle with making some of these changes, please contact me and we can talk a little bit about how I can help you with a sleep coaching plan designed specifically for you. As this is a re-record of a seminar I delivered during the week, we couldn't record the live seminar due to privacy. We actually have all of the questions from that seminar. So stay on, because a lot of these questions are probably questions that you have. What do you think about naps? Naps are fantastic. For people who don't have a problem falling asleep or staying asleep, naps are great. If you just struggle to get enough of an overnight sleep, definitely add in a nap. Now, with your naps, you want to keep it either at around 20 to 30 minutes or stretch it out to 90 minutes. If you wake up or you get woken up at a different time, what can happen is that you're woken up within a sleep cycle, and that can cause you to get that horrible kind of drowsy feeling that takes a little while to get over. So keep it to about 20 minutes or keep it at around 90 minutes. Now, if you are someone who actually struggles to fall asleep at night, naps may not be the solution for you. Why do I recommend delaying caffeine by 90 minutes in the morning? So yeah, this is about sleep pressure. So when you first wake up in the morning, there's actually some residual sleep pressure remaining in your system. Now, if you remember when I was sort of trying to explain how the sleep pressure interacts with caffeine, what happens is that when you're drinking caffeine during the day, it blocks the adenosine. Now, what happens in the morning is, because you're actually waking up with sleep pressure, the adenosine is already in the receptors where the caffeine wants to go. So that caffeine actually has nowhere to land. So you're not actually going to get much of your morning caffeine hit if you have it before 90 minutes. So if you wait about 90 minutes, that first caffeine drink is actually going to have more of an effect, and you're less likely to have a crash later. Cold showers sound horrible. Does the whole shower need to be cold? Can I end on hot? How do I get started with this? Yep, they do sound horrible, but I don't know anyone who has tried these and not felt great afterwards. So best approach if you are completely new to cold exposure is to start on your normal warm hot shower, and you actually want to end on cold to get the most benefit. And what you can do is just start with 10 or 20 seconds and build up by 10 or 20 seconds each day. When you're doing this, what I recommend is trying to focus on your breathing. So in through the nose, long extended exhale through the mouth. So you can just focus on your breath. You could even do, say, 10 breaths, 10 calm breaths, and then the next day build it to 15 breaths. I wake up super early in the morning and I can't get back to sleep. Can you suggest something to help? Yes, I can. Yoga Nidra is a great resource for this. Okay, I work shifts where we do a day shift in the morning, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. and come back for a night shift 1 p.m. to 7 a.m. called a quick change. We do this 2 times over a 3-week period. Any tips for trying to get some sleep during the 8-hour break? So yeah, this would be an ideal time to try to get a nap. If you are someone that really just struggles with napping, doing a Yoga Nidra would be really great during this period. How much deep sleep and how much REM sleep should we get? So should be getting roughly 20 to 25% of each of these in your sleep. However, what a lot of people aren't aware of is that the sleep tracking devices that are available to us as consumers are not very accurate when it comes to figuring out how much quality sleep we are getting. So my advice with deep and REM sleep is to just not worry about it, because chances are the devices that you're looking at aren't giving you an accurate read anyway. My eyes feel tired, cannot stay open, but my brain is running. What should I do? Yeah, so this is a really good example of where the arousal system might be out of whack, that stress system, right? So there's a few things you can do. Having a really good sleep routine and making sure that there's something relaxing in there, some meditation or some breath work is great. And again, a yoga nidra might be a good choice there as well. Just wondering what your thoughts are about screens like iPads or phones around sleep time. Is it any different to reading a book? Yeah, it is different. So the main concern with using devices at night is actually the blue light. So that blue light is what is going to affect your melatonin, which is what we need for sleep. So if you are using iPads or phones to read, make sure that you've got a blue light filter or even an audiobook so that you don't have to look at the screen. Do you recommend taking naps during the day? Currently, I feel like a nap is helping. Yep, absolutely. If you feel like a nap is helping you, 100% do that. If you can't get your 7 to 9 hours at night, I highly recommend napping, provided you still fall asleep okay at night. I can't exercise at 4 a.m. before heading to work at 5:30. Body does not want to exercise at that time of morning. Drive home approximately 7 p.m. after that day shift and would like to exercise. How long before going to bed? Yeah, so there's actually been a new study out here. Now, the study was done on men, no women were included. But what that study showed was that you can finish exercise up to 90 minutes before you go to sleep, and it actually benefits your sleep. They also looked at training which finished 60 minutes before bed, and that is where they saw a negative impact on sleep. So finish training at least 90 minutes before you go to bed and you should be fine. I go to sleep at 10 p.m. then wake around 2. Does it help to get up and read for a bit so as to go back to sleep? Yeah, absolutely. So what I like to do here with clients who are struggling with waking up and not getting back to sleep, if this is a regular occurrence, what you don't want to do is be lying around in bed awake, because when you do that repeatedly, you're actually entraining your brain to associate bed with wakefulness. So if it is something that's happening a lot, what you want to do is actually get up out of bed, go to the couch, somewhere comfy, and do something relaxing for about 20 minutes or until you feel sleepy again, and then go back to bed. I've read some things that suggest there is a significant risk of liver disease and other issues with melatonin use. Is there anything else you can suggest aside from avoiding blue light for reducing cortisol during daytime sleeping? I tend to focus on sleep hygiene aspects first, because many times the sleep hygiene aspects will do more than what melatonin could. And saying that, melatonin can be useful for circadian rhythm disorders, but that's something you would need to speak to a GP about. I would suggest scrolling back, looking at all of the sleep hygiene aspects, focusing on an evening routine, making sure you're doing something relaxing. Breathing techniques to fall asleep. Yep, absolutely. There are many breathing techniques that you can use to help relax you, and that will improve sleep. And I think that's about all we had. I will also be sending out a follow-up on this, which has a cheat sheet, some earplug recommendations, my favorite eye mask, some yoga nidra scripts, and some breathing techniques. So if you would like all of that supplementary information, please email me at carla@aurasleepcoaching.com. I also have a case study which I prepared around one of my shift working clients that really goes into the detail of what we did with this particular shift worker. If you would like a copy of that, you can email me at carla@aurasleepcoaching.com.